Today we are going to be installing the AG01 Mini Gimbals into the Radiomaster Zorro. Now this isn't my review video, that has been published separately. This is going to be a sort of a how-to guide or my experience of installing the AG01 Minis into this radio. I've not looked at any instructions, I've not even looked at how to take this radio apart yet, but hopefully by the end of this video you'll have an idea of what the process is, and maybe hopefully I'll show you along the way some of the things you need to be aware of as well. So the first thing we need to do is take a look at getting this radio apart, and then we'll take a look at getting these gimbals installed. So the first thing I'm going to do is take the covers off and get the batteries out of the radio, because obviously we don't want to risk doing anything silly with the power. Now, as I've said already, I haven't actually taken this radio apart before, and I haven't bothered to watch any other guides, but everything looks fairly straightforward. We've got some screws here, 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 with two in the middle as well. You want to be careful, there are some here which offers the adjustment for the radios, so I'm just looking through. That's that one, that one, that one, that one for the gimbals, so we want to be avoiding them. So what we'll do is work our way around first of all. Okay, so that's all of them removed. Next what we'll do is we'll see, oh, there we go. Looks like the back shell lifts off nice and easily. There is something attached, so if we look over, we have the two wires at the bottom here for our battery. So this one from here and this one from here to the PCB. So we're going to very carefully just give him a little bit of a tug to unclip that one. A little bit of a tug to unclip that one. And then that will free the back cover up from the radio. So you can see we've got them there, nice and straightforward. Once you've got the cover off completely, the first thing you will notice is that you are going to need to remove this PCB completely to be able to get to the gimbals. You're going to need to remove it and undo all of the cables and connections. Now, there is quite a lot of connections on this. I will walk you through what each of them do, but my advice to you at this point is to take a picture of your radio. Make sure you understand where everything goes. If we take a look at these all one at a time, on the left, we've got this top connector here, this one here. This goes off to this switch back down here at the front. We've then got the bottom left, which goes off to our gimbal. The bottom right, again, going off to our gimbal. And then the top right goes to this top switch here. If we go the same on the right hand side, it looks to be the same. Top right, opposite corner, goes to the switches. Bottom right goes to the gimbal, bottom left goes to the gimbal, and then top left goes to the switch pack. As for which wires go where on the gimbal, if we take a look at the new gimbal we're going to be installing, so the AG01 Mini, you've got two wires. You've got the sensor, the hall sensor for the vertical axis, and the hall sensor for the horizontal. If we look at it, the way it's installed currently, it appears that the vertical sensor, which is this one here, goes to the bottom right on this side, and the vertical sensor on this gimbal here goes to the bottom right. So the verticals go to that one and that one. That is labeled VR on that one, and on this one, I can't see a label on that one, but it's VR on there, and that would mean then horizontal sensor, which is this one here, goes to LH on this side, and the horizontal sensor on this one isn't labeled, and that goes to the bottom left side. So once you've done that, you now know where your wires need to go back to when installing the new gimbals. Some things to note is you're going to want to make sure that you've removed your SD card before taking the radio apart. So we're going to get that out the way now too. I'm going to give that a gentle press with a screwdriver to get that out and place that safely to one side. And we're then going to carefully need to remove all of these plugs, but also making sure that when we remove this ribbon cable here in the middle, we need to be careful as well. If we just take a look up here, you can see that there are also a couple of other connections. You've got S2 and S1. There's a little black wire on these that seem to go down to the pots on the top. And then we've got one more under here, this one here, that goes down inside. I can't quite see where that goes. It might be the power switch. And then there's a couple of others down here at the bottom here and here. Again, they will be fairly self-explanatory, but just do be aware of them as you're removing. So to start removing the cables, we'll take our careful pry tool and just lift this tab up and gently pop him out, nice and safely out the way. We'll then carefully disconnect these. Now, you've got to be careful doing these type of connectors. It is very easy to actually pull a wire out of the connection. If it feels a bit too much tension to do by hand, I would advise using something like a pair of tweezers like I'm doing here, or taking a careful pair of pliers and doing it that way, but just gently withdrawing them from their connection. That way you're not going to break any connectors off the board or pull any wires out of the connector as you're doing it. We've then got this one on the bottom of the board down here, which is just here. So we're going to go in there and just pop him forward as well. And again, we've got the same up the top here. There's a little black one up here. Again, we're just going to gently give him a wiggle and allow him to break free. And then we do exactly the same process on the other side. Okay, so it looks like all of the connections are off, so we now need to remove the board. Now we've got 4 screws along the bottom. We've got 1, 2, 3, and 4 here. We then have another one here and another one here, and that looks to be about it. What we'll do first of all is withdraw these 4 and just check that these 2 need to be removed, because they may not. They could be holding on to something on the other side, and then we'll see if the board comes free. So I've just removed these 4 along the bottom, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and it now feels like the board is actually happy to come out, which means you do not need to remove those 2 screws there, the black ones. Just concentrate on the 4 silver ones, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you can gently withdraw the board up, making sure that the cables here go through. You've got the gimbal cables that go through the hole in the middle, but you do need to be aware that there are some cables going from the front board to this one here. So flipping it down and up, you can see that there's actually a black ribbon cable that comes up to here from the Express LRS module or whatever module you've got in it. So you do need to be aware of that as well. That's another one that needs to be removed. So once you've gently lifted the board up, get it on an angle, and then again, you want to carefully remove this cable from the connector. They are very tight, but once you've done that, the board comes free, and then you can take this and place it safely to one side. Something worth noting, that once you do remove the top board, these little buttons, your 2 momentary buttons on the top here, will actually come free. My advice to you is actually take them out, put them out the way with the board as well. Otherwise, they may fall out somewhere and you won't be able to find them. So that is something to watch. They do fall out as soon as you withdraw the board, but the rest of it all seems okay. Everything else is held in place nicely. Now that the board is out the way, we can see the actual gimbals themselves, and we can see the 4 screws that hold them in place. They are located down here, 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 and here. So what we need to do is take them out, and that should then allow us to withdraw the gimbal. So we'll do it on the left first. Now all 4 screws on that side are removed. I'm going to gently give the gimbal a bit of a tug, and you can then see that it comes free and lifts out from inside the radio, allowing us now to actually get our new gimbal installed, which is exactly the same process but in reverse. It's worth noting that once you've removed the gimbal, there is this little metal ring down here which is in place that will come out. You do need to make sure that that is properly in place before you put the new gimbal into the radio. It is easy to dislodge if you're moving it around. It only actually goes in one way, so you simply need to make sure that when you've got it in, you've got it down. Just make sure it's rotated in the correct place and it sits in the bottom of the radio down there properly. When you're ready to put your new gimbal in, again, make sure that when you're doing it, it goes the right way around, because the screw holes on each side of the gimbal are different. So with the new AG01, the original one came out with this sensor on this side here, and it needs to go back in the same way, because when you flip it over on this side, you can see that there are some differences in the way the screw holders work. You also want to be careful that when you're lowering the gimbal in, that these wires down here are not catching. They are very tight. They are located right around the edge of the gimbal on this side here and this side here. So you want to, again, make sure that when you're putting it in, that they're not going to catch, not going to be in the way, and they're not getting trapped underneath any of the screws. So we're going to take the new gimbal. We're going to gently drop it into place, lowering it down and making sure that we get it exactly where it should be. That side there's gone down. Again, making sure that this top side goes down properly as well. There we go. That's in place. We then take the same screws that we took out and then screw the gimbal in. Again, I can't stress enough, making sure that there are no wires trapped under the gimbal as you're putting it in, especially looking at those wires on the top side, because they are right next to the gimbal as it goes down in place. We're going to gently pop him in and make sure as we screw this one down, we're not trapping anything at all. Put the last screw in down here. And once that's done, we've got the gimbal screwed in place. If we flip the radio over, and you can then see that it's installed, it all looks nice and flat all the way around. It's sitting incorrectly, so it's all installed, ready to go. So the process now is exactly the same for the other side. So again, the 4 screws have been removed. And I'm going to just gently move that wire out the way, grab the gimbal, give it a gentle tug, and then it will pop free from the housing. Again, making sure that before we put the new gimbal in, these wires at the top here are not going to get caught. Our little metal piece is in the right place as well. So to put the other gimbal back in, again, being very careful of the wiring, dropping it in place, down on through. It is easy to get things caught on this side, especially as well, because there are some extra wires here. We have the speaker cable. So again, you just want to be careful. I know I've said it a number of times, but I can't stress enough that you really don't want to get anything trapped. So once the gimbal's in place, it's time to screw it all in. One quick check just to do before you do that is that they are both this way around. So we've got the bar on the left, bar on the left. That way, you know you've got the gimbal in properly. Okay, so the gimbal is all in. If we flip it over and check both of them, give them a nice feel, have a look around here. Everything looks nicely installed. Everything looks correct. Don't worry too much at this moment in time if anything's binding. That's perfectly normal. Now, you may notice that you no longer have a self-centering throttle. Don't worry, that's normal. The actual screw for that is in the back cover. It's that screw that is sticking out down there. Not sure if you can see it, but it's right there. So don't worry, we'll sort that before the radio goes back together. Once we put the back cover on, that will resolve that. So we're now able to do the reverse of what we did earlier, which is get the board back in place. So we'll pop that on, get all the wiring connected properly, and make sure then that everything works as we would expect before putting the back cover on. So on reassembly, first thing, we're going to take these buttons. Remember, we took them out earlier. You want to make sure that they go back in, because if you don't put them in now, you will have problems and you will struggle to get them in later. They go up here. So we're going to pop him in there and him in there, making sure that they're all nicely in. We're then going to get our board, and the first thing to make sure we connect is our module. Don't forget that one, because obviously your radio is not going to work if your RF module is not connected. So the first one to do is that one. We're going to place him over the board, gently give him a press in. So now that's in place, we know everything is correct. We will then take our gimbal wires, so not the ones that run up the side, but the ones from the gimbals themselves. On this side, you want to keep the vertical gimbal cable coming out the side, out the way. However, on this side, you want to put it actually up through the board hole, because that is actually in a different position to the other one, and you want to make sure it comes up out of the way and can't actually catch on anything. Then it's simply a process of making sure that nothing's lost, nothing's hiding that you're not going to be able to get to in a minute, and then gently lower the board back in place, lowering it in, and then getting it so when you're ready for it to go in, it should then just sit down on the mounts. I'm going to take a single screw a second and hold it in place with that, just so it doesn't flop around. We'll do one of the ones next to the USB port in the middle. That'll just hold it all there. Make sure the top buttons work. Yep, they're fine. Okay, so we've got one screw holding him in. Before we actually put the other three in, just to make sure it's right, I'm going to do all the connections next. So what we're going to do is start with the gimbals. So we've got this one and this one. So this one will be our bottom right hand side, as we discussed earlier. We want to make sure that clips down in place nicely. There we go. We've got bottom left, because the gimbals were the bottom two connections. So again, popping him down, clipping him in. We've then got this little switch one, which comes over the top. And then we've got the switch pack one, which went right up over the side for the switch pack. And we'll pop him over the top there. And then we've got this little black one at the top up here. I'll use a pair of tweezers just to make sure I get this one in properly. Turning the radio to make it more comfortable is always a good idea. There's no point struggling with something when you're trying to put it in simply because of the angle you're on. We have our connector down here at the bottom, popping him back in. We've got what they've labeled the horn connector, which will be the speaker, I suspect. So that side's all done. It's now time to do the same over this side. So what we'll do is we will take our vertical access and plug him in first, which is onto, I believe, this right hand connector. The horizontal axis onto the left hand connector at the bottom. We have our top switch, which comes down into there, which is labeled F. Into C, we've got this other top switch pack. We've then got our bottom connector. This one can be a bit easier with a pair of tweezers just to align it up. And then pop him in. And then we've got our final top connector up here, which is this one here. Making sure again that that goes in nice and square. This wiring will need to simply be adjusted so it goes in the right place. And there's some grips down in the side here for making sure that that does that. And then we have our ribbon cable, which we need to very carefully pop back in. Now these ones can be a little bit challenging to get in when you're doing them. You want to make sure that it sits straight in. You can again use a pair of tweezers, but you do want to be careful with these because they are very, very easily damaged. Once it's down in solid, you can then flip the latch over and that should be in place like that. So the only connections at this point that we don't have connected is our battery port this side here and our battery port this side here. Once we've done that, it's then time just to check that nothing is tight, nothing is catching. So I'm going to take the radio off that. I'm going to move these two gimbals and make sure that that all feels good. I'm happy with that. Just make sure there's plenty of slack there. That's for that vertical axis. Same on this side here, making sure that there's nothing catching. Though that wire comes up through the hole, we'll just push him to that side there slightly. And again, making sure that there's plenty of room on that one for it to go up and down, which there is. You can see that it does pull on there when you're moving the gimbal, but it's nothing too tight. There should be no reason there for any concern at all. So that is all looking good. Flip it over this side, just check. Yeah, that's fine. So now it's just put these other 3 screws back in. Don't forget them. Then we'll get the back cover on and actually test the radio. A nice easy way to test this radio before putting the back cover on is if you've got a 2S battery. We can simply plug into the port on the bottom, and that will allow us to actually test the radio is working as expected. So what we're going to do is just put the connector in. Not the easiest one to fit from that battery. And then we can power it up and just make sure everything is working as it should be. Notice the first thing that's happened is come up with the no SD card error, schoolboy error on my part, because I haven't actually put that back in. So again, it's a good prompt at that point to make sure that you have actually done this. Okay, SD card's in now, and I've got it on the mixer monitor, so I can just check what my actual channels are doing. So we'll get it to the right level. So we'll go up on channel 3, down, down, up. Absolutely perfect. Perfect, 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 perfect. Or if we do the old check, top right corners, everything's gone to full. That all looks fine. We'll just check a couple of my other switches. Mode switch is working. Arming switch is working. Mode is working. All looking good. Buttons working because one of my program functions kicked in. So all looking good. Time to now just pop the back cover on and just check that throttle is doing what I want it to do. Okay, so let's get the back cover on. So we need to plug in the 2 battery connections first of all. These are quite stiff, so you will need to be aware of that. We've done one there. And we need to just pop the right-hand one on there as well. There we go, all done. We then need to just gently lower it over the top. Now, we'll get rid of the boxes as we do this. Just making sure that as we go in, there's a screw here. I don't know where it is. There it is. You guys can see it there. That is the screw that catches the arm that is down in here. So that arm is down here for turning off the self-centering throttle. So just being aware that you're probably going to want to make sure that that cable is out the way there. That one is out the way there. So when you're popping the back cover on, that screw can pop down on in without catching anything. The back cover should just press in place. There we go. That feels good. I can already feel the throttle. The spring is gone on that as I've done that. So we'll pop a couple of screws in the back. Again, just making sure that you've had no wires trapped anywhere near the screw holes. And then you can see now we've done that, it's starting to take it off. So we can then now just make sure it all clips in. I feel a bit tighter on this side. So what I'm going to do is before going any further on that, that might simply be the throttle screw, but before risking damaging anything, if you're never 100% sure, stop, pop the cover back off. Let's just have a look. just to make sure everything is where it should be. But it's always worth just checking these things as you do it. So we'll now get all of the screws back in and then see how it feels. Okay, so all done. Just looking around all of the edges, everything looks good. Feeling the gimbals, nothing feels like it's binding. Let me just get that. Throttle is very loose. I'm going to probably need to add a slight amount of tension on that. There's a slight bounce to it on the bottom because of the cabling, because when it is so loose, that side is absolutely fine. There's just no tension on that side now at all. So what I'm going to want to do is just do a slight adjustment on that through the screw holes that we've got. Okay, so installation complete. Again, just checking all the gimbals. Everything feels good. Everything feels fine. Gimbal's holding nice. I got my throttle just as I like it. That all feels good. So the last job to do now they're installed is just to calibrate the sticks, because remember, they are new gimbals, so you will want to calibrate the sensors. So we're going to go into the system settings page through to the hardware area, and then we've got calibration for the sticks. So it says center to start. So I'm going to place him in the center there. Stick midpoints. That looks fine. Move sticks and pots. So we're going to just move it to all the extremes, just like we would usually. We need to do the pots as well because we're doing them. Just make sure we find where the center is on these. That one there, that one there. There's no indents, unfortunately, on these. Although if you notice on mine, they don't quite go to the same place for where center is. They do now. There we go. That's better. So center when done, making sure we've got the full extremes. Looks good for center for me. There we go. So we've now done the stick calibration. And if we just, again, hop back to our mixer monitor. Everything looks good. I'm not having to push the sticks in tight to get to 100. Absolutely fine. That one's just on 99, but I'm not worried about that. That one's 100. Possibly didn't quite go tight enough on that one. That's at 99, but it's one different. I'm not concerned about that at all. So that's it. That's how you install the AG01 Minis on the Radiomaster Zorro.